You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. Can connecting with your inner world reshape your outer reality? Stay tuned to discover more. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we explore the transformative power of inner healing and its role in creating lasting change. We delve into how addressing our internal world can lead to significant shifts in our external reality. Our guest shares insights from her journey and professional experience, offering a unique perspective on achieving success and fulfillment. This conversation uncovers practical strategies for building confidence, overcoming obstacles, and aligning with your true potential. Shimrit Nativ is a success and freedom mentor, CEO, and founder of Master Your Path community. Having built a six-figure business in a matter of months when she first started out, with no prior experience, Shimrit is the perfect example of what's possible when you have a desire and drive to create a significant impact. As a transformational and success coach and mindset expert, Shimrit has helped hundreds of driven and creative individuals across the globe create and sustain a consistent baseline of confidence, success, and fulfillment. Shimrit is an accredited and certified ICF professional coach, Procter Gallagher consultant, and a neurochange solutions consultant in training with Dr. Joe Dispenza. Let's meet Shimrit Nativ. Hi, Shimrit. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because inner healing for lasting change is such an intriguing topic for today's conversation. And I think something that a lot of listeners can relate to and definitely use more of in their lives. So thank you for being here today and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Petra. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm excited for the conversation we're going to have.
Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure. So would you like to start us off with a little bit about yourself and sort of your story, where you've come from, where you've been, and how that has led you to doing what you do today? I imagine there's a little bit of a connection there. So let's hear a little bit about who you are so our audience can get to know you.
Okay, wow. Thank you so much. I'll start with today, and then maybe we can go back in time a little bit. So today I am a mother to a 12-year-old boy, and I'm an entrepreneur. I have my online coaching business where I help, together with my team, we help people all over the world to really create a life that they can fall in love with. And I call it to master the skill of freedom. So freedom and well-being in any shape and form, whether it is financial prosperity or physical health or relationship that are fulfilling or any other way of expression of well-being is a skill. So freedom and prosperity and well-being, these are skills that we can practice and master. And so that's what I am very much devoted to doing for myself and for the people that I work with, and that I have the opportunity to create any kind of impact on their lives. So that's what I do today. And I've been doing that for quite a long time now. However, before that, I did have a different career for over 20 years. I was a musician. I'm still a musician, but I was an active musician. That was my career. I was teaching music and writing and performing and producing and all of the things that musicians do. And I was writing my own music. And even that career, I started relatively later in life. So I didn't start with music as most professional musicians start, which is in childhood or, teenage years. I actually started in my 20s. So already something that I think is related, as you said, it has surely the story, my story, like for anyone else, has something to do with who I am today. So I want to point this out that, again, this freedom to be whoever you desire to be, to start any new chapter that you desire to start in your life, no matter where you are, how old you are, what happened to you before, that is always, always possible. And that's what life is calling us actually to do, to rewrite or expand our story and to answer all these precious voices that are coming from our soul and that are seeking expression. And so, me starting a career later in life, relatively as a musician, and then again later in life as a coach and as a business owner, it's all possible for anyone to do. And so I find that connection there. And also, one can choose to live any kind of lifestyle that we desire. So in my 20s, I actually, before going into music, I decided to get off grid, and I went out and lived outdoors for almost 5 years. So that's quite extreme. It's for me, it's like speaking of another lifetime of mine, but it was still in this lifetime. I'm 44 years old, so it was still within this cycle, but it feels like a different one. I lived, no facilities, collecting wood, cooking on the fire, no shower, no toilet, no kids, like really out there. And that's actually where I started playing flute. And first I was teaching myself, and I was very rebellion in that sense, doing everything my way. But later on, I was very much devoted to my musical career, and I came back to civilization and went to university. And so that's another piece of my story. I think the seeds for my passion to help people and for my gift to be able to really hear the nonverbal and more energetic spiritual voice, in the human being, the seeds for that were planted in me, I guess, in my life contract, even before I was born, and definitely into the reality I was born to. I was born into a family with amazing parents and a brother that had cerebral palsy, who died when I was 6 years old. And I had a very special connection with him that no one could understand, because at the time, no one really believed in my environment anyway, that there is a soul and an awareness in that body, because he had a very extreme state of cerebral palsy. So there was no communication, and basically no one really considered him as a spiritual being with an awareness and the soul. But I remember that that's how I connected with him, without knowing really, all the stories around that, and what does he really have. I was so young. I didn't know all that, right? And he died. And I remember when I was 20 years old, just shortly before I moved off grid, I was looking through a photo album at my parents' living room, and it was his photo album. I was looking through his photo album, and at the last page, there was the notice of his funeral from the newspaper that my parents saved and put in that album. And I saw my birthday, which I was not aware of, that he was buried on my 6th birthday. You know how when you see your birth date, it just stands out to you, even if it's just a commercial or whatever. So I was like, wow, he was buried on my 6th birthday. I was not aware of that. And that was a very profound, how when you have these moments where your journey, your calling, is just speaking to, it's just like, I call it a sprouting moment. Something sprouts in you, and even if you need a few more years to connect those dots and really understand what sprouted, but that it happened in that moment. That was one of those moments. And I truly believe that it was the seed of my desire and gift to help people and to feel into their soul and connect on a soul level, and then help them bring that into this physical reality that we all share and can, communicate and participate together in. So this is another piece that relates to what I do today. And maybe one last piece to your question about my story would be when many of the tools and modalities that I use today, I actually received in my own healing journey so we are fast forwarding another decade or so. or more, another decade, let's say, when I discovered that I had precancerous lesions in my cervix. And that was another kind of a big shifting, sprouting moment. And I was absolutely committed to not go with a doctor's recommendation to go into a procedure and just solve it this way. And I knew that this is a lesson, that this is there is something for me to unlock there. And I did that, and I healed my body with a lot of inner work and with the help of mentors and, again, modalities that I've gathered in that process. And very shortly after that, I met who today is my husband, and I became a mom. And so fast forward to now, all of these pieces come together into my mission. Yeah. So these are a few chapters.
Wonderful.
Recap. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's been an impactful story for you by the sounds of what you've shared with us, and your own losses that you worked through, but also a deep connection with your brother and living in nature for 5 years. Wow. I don't know anybody who can say that. So that is amazing that did you find yourself connected in different ways after you did that? Because I would imagine if you cut away all of these distractions that we call modern conveniences today, I think you might start reevaluating what really is important in life, and your perspective might change a little. What was that experience like for you when you went and just connected with yourself and nature?
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a really profound opportunity to connect to the elements, so like fire was needed for to warm me in the winter, and to to be able to have food, and to be able to have warm water to wash my body, so there was a lot of fire all day, every day. And fire has its own presence, its own spirit, its own nature, and it's very powerful. And you want to learn how to communicate with that and how to handle it so there's harmony and it actually works. Even just the simplest thing as putting up the fire and and having it last. So that, and then of course of the other elements too. You're just very connected to the elements, to the earth, to water, to all of them. So I think for your question, this is one of the big things, the connection to the elements and also to my element. So that's when I started playing music. Flute was my instrument at the time. And I actually wanted to play the flute since I was much younger, in the age where maybe most people would start to become professional musicians. But it was always, I had a flute and it was always just there in my room, as a teenager and so on. And I never stuck with me. And that is where I was able to really break through that. And I believe it's also part of the environment, the natural environment and the lifestyle I was in. And having said all that, I was in a relationship at the time with the partner with whom I lived out in nature. And that relationship was a reflection of the patterns that I still was held in when it comes to relationships that I have broken through later on in my healing journey that I've mentioned before. So yes, I was living in nature, but I was also very much, I'm looking for the word in English. It's not confined. It was also a loving relationship. It's not that I was locked in there, but spiritually and energetically and mentally, I was actually not in this very free and, so there was also this kind of contrast there between the very free, connected to nature lifestyle and the relationship I was in and who I was in that relationship. So,
yeah, that makes sense when we talk about some of the limiting beliefs and limiting things that we place on ourselves, sometimes unknowingly, or that we have in our lives. That makes a lot of sense that when everything else is stripped away, you have to start looking at those things and at the relationships and the relationship with yourself. So,
exactly.
Yeah. You mentioned something very curious in the beginning when you were talking about freedom and well-being. you mentioned that those are skills. And I find that incredibly interesting because I think most people don't actually look at those things as skills. They look at them as circumstances that often happen to them, or don't happen to them in life. And so to say that these are skills really implies that we have a choice over those things. We can learn and we can expand and grow. So how do you learn those skills? Part of, like you said, are maybe those sprouting moments, those things where different events enter our awareness and we start connecting the dots. But when you work with clients sort of in your everyday work or even with yourself, how do we foster these skills to give ourselves more choice in the things that we want in our lives?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's the most important question. Well, I love that you're bringing the word choice in here, which is a word that I use a lot also to replace the word control, by the way, which you did not say, but I just want to already offer to use this word choice even more, because it's not about controlling the circumstances and it's not about controlling ourselves or our thoughts. You could say that wouldn't be wrong to say, but I just prefer to replace that with the word choice, because it is all a choice. Whether you choose to free yourself or not, it's still a choice. And that's why that's the only real freedom that there is to make that choice. And of course, we don't always feel like we have that choice. We feel like we just can't choose what to think about, or definitely not consistently and continuously. And we can choose, how much money we have in the bank, or if there's COVID or not in the world, or. And of course, there are some things that are more on a collective consciousness level. But of course, then the only way for us to change that is by changing ourselves. And so this is not for your question. So sorry, I drifted a bit off topic of your question. So if we go back to the choice, but it's related, right? Because we want all these things to change and we feel like we don't have a choice, but we do, because it starts with the choices that we make every single moment. And I always say that every single moment is election in our inner state. We literally can develop that's the skill to choose what we focus on, what we give our attention to, what we accept as true now. And that's the skill. And then to your question, how to foster that skill and how to develop it? Well, just like any skill, with practice. So you develop any skill through practicing certain things. Just like any skill, there are different exercises, if you will, or routines that you want to practice in order to develop the whole skill, right? So I many times give examples from music, because this is my other career and instrument, and just because it's such a good analogy as well. So for me to master the flute as an instrument, I would practice scales, and I would practice, this melody and this exercise, and I would practice my breath, and I would do all these different things in order for me to then be able to go up on stage and just master my instrument and the piece that I'm about to play. So it's the same thing. So for your question, how do we develop and foster the skill of freedom, the skill of choice, is through practicing different exercises, different routines, different processes. And with practice, we're talking about consistent practice with repetition. These are the definition of practice, really, is something that is repetitive and consistent, right? So there are different processes and tools that I practice and that I teach practicing in combination to develop this skill. So I don't know how much in depth do you want me to go, and in detail do you want me to go with this? So you can definitely, ask, and I will answer further. But generally speaking, it's to approach it as any skill. So it's not like you have it or you don't, you're lucky or you're not, you're talented or you're not. Every one of us have all the equipment. So the instrument is already here. Right? Like you have the flute, you can, just like I had as I shared before, I had the flute all those years and I didn't. So every one of us have the instrument, have the equipment, have the capacity, have the potential. And it's just the conscious mind, that's the instrument, basically. We haven't been taught how. We've received it at birth, or rather a bit later than birth, actually, we received it, but let's say at birth, and nobody taught us how to use it. And this instrument, part of its features, if you will, or its nature, is that it operates on a program. And that program is subconscious, meaning it's automatic. So we don't need to consciously think in order for it to work. And we can see this in very trivial things like, how we know how to talk the language that we speak, or how we know how to tie our shoes, or how we know how to go to the toilet when we need to, right? We don't need to consciously think, but once upon a time we did. Once upon a time, we did need to consciously think of how to do these things, or someone needed to teach us how to do them, until they became an automatic thing that we don't need to consciously think about it. It's the same thing. So the thing is, though, that during those early years, when this subconscious program was developed, we've learned and developed these automatic patterns. Some of them served us and still are serving us. And some of them maybe served us at the time to adapt and survive and adapt to the environment that we were in, but now are no longer serving us and actually holding us back, that are more not how to tie the shoes and how to, speak a language, but more like how to behave and how to react and what to believe in order to adapt to the environment. But we don't need to adapt to the environment any longer. We can actually change our environment and create an environment. But if we don't know how to go into the operating system and update that program, then it's automatic, just like it's automatic that you do all these other functions that you do automatically. And that's the skill, basically. It's to learn how to change those patterns on a subconscious level. So the program operates on a level that matches what you want to experience in your environment and not what you currently have in your environment as circumstances and conditions. Is that making sense?
Yeah, that's actually fantastic, because it gives us the freedom to change the things. So instead of having to think that we are stuck in this indefinitely and there's nothing we can do about our circumstances, we really have this choice to empower ourselves to change these patterns it is like we're listening to our 6-year-old selves and we're taking advice from our 6-year-old selves
100%
as to what we thought back then, right? So
exactly like that.
So it gives us that choice to make changes. And I think a lot of people, and myself included for a very long time, weren't aware that we actually have this power. And once we get to know that, it can be very liberating and very empowering to change those patterns and update them to where we want to be today, who we want to be today. And then things really start to drastically change. And I think you had some of those times when you were healing your own health challenges and you were experiencing what these changes in pattern can actually change in your life. Absolutely. So there's quite far-reaching things that happen when you start working on that. And I mean, your physical health is one of those things that changes, but you work with clients on many other things as well. So what kind of changes do happen when we start working on this outdated programming?
Oh my God, all changes. So definitely physical health for sure. And I've seen literally miracles, like people coming out. We just celebrated one of our clients who checked out her walking aids. So her wheelchair and her walker that she needed to use for the past 4 years. She couldn't walk and she hardly got out of her bed. And she of course tried everything and the doctors and everything and nothing helped. And because she changed herself, it's all from the inside out. That's really how we create, how everything is created. And so physical health for sure, many, many, many examples. Money, right? So receiving money unexpectedly or expectedly, expanding businesses, breaking through, patterns of financial results that keep repeating, clearing debt, receiving bonuses, finding the dream job, with the bonuses of like the perfect car that they didn't even know was included in the job offer, or, stuff like that. Bonuses from previous jobs that all of a sudden were waiting in the mail, like really all these crazy stories, absolutely amazing, doubling, tripling the income while working less, buying your dream vacation house in Cyprus. Beautiful, beautiful stories around financial abundance and business success or career success. And then relationships, whether it is, we just celebrated one of our clients who have a daughter who is already a young adult, and her daughter didn't speak with her for a couple of years, which is very terrible, right? Very painful, very sad. And now they are close again and they are speaking again, and there's love and connection. I mean, those are the things that really get me crying. This and the physical health, these things. And partner relationships. So either it is finding the one, and getting married and, starting a family after years of, dating or whatnot, or healing the relationship. So we have clients that, are married for 20, 30 years and struggling to keep it going and not really being fulfilled, and finding the love again and finding the connection again. And we have sometimes couples that go into our programs together, actually, which is really, really beautiful. So yeah, all that and more. Publishing books, we have a client who in age almost 70 got on stage and fulfilled now she's a rock singer in a band and performing. And this is someone who had chronic back pain and could hardly get up from her bed for years already, thinking that, okay, this is my elderly life and I'm grateful for what I have, which is beautiful. But being grateful and settling is two different things, and we don't want to mix that up, right? So yeah, everything is possible.
Wow. Yeah. As I'm listening to you describe those, I feel like our external world will be a reflection of our internal world. So when we can align our inside world, subconscious, and what you spoke about, we're going to see that ripple and reflect out into our outside world.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, there will be more abundance, more health, more happiness, more joy as we're aligning ourselves to all of that. So these are, I think, for some people, maybe a little bit difficult to imagine or to think about. If they're stuck working several jobs just to make ends meet, they're struggling financially, they're struggling in their relationships, to have that belief that you could change that and that you could make your external world a reflection of your inner world can be a very difficult thing for many, many people because it's just not been their experience. So how do you help your clients overcome that initial maybe disbelief or skepticism that this is really something we could work on? How do you help them overcome that?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Well, first of all, realizing that the external world is a reflection of the inner world. So it's not everything I have to say, because this can still, keep us in the frustration. Okay. But really just realizing that, right? So if it feels like a struggle, and if I am frustrated, or if I am hopeless, or if I am in despair, or if I am anxious and stressed, then it kind of matches my reality. Yes, you can say I'm like that because of my reality, but that is just the other way around, because the cause is always internal. My reality is like that because of how I am, and not the other way around. And of course, that requires a radical ownership and responsibility. And then to your question, which is such a good question, around the disbelief and how to kind of break through that initially, so there can be more readiness and willingness to the practice, to the consistency of it. This is where I find the scientific proof that we now already have to all of that be such a blessing. And this is why the works of people in the world that is dedicated to to bringing that scientific proof is something that I cherish and honor so much, because at this point, science is catching up with spirituality. And we know that for a fact for quite some time now, for a few decades already. Quantum mechanics, quantum physics, it's a newer science, definitely, but it's been around for a while. It's a few good decades already. And there is absolute scientific explanations to how everything is first created in the field. And so when we say the cause is always internal, if that sounds a bit kind of, vague or a bit like, I don't know, new wishy-washy talk, and someone's like, yeah, but, I'm struggling and I don't have the time and capacity to start, then we can change that term. Instead of the cause is internal, the cause is in the field, in the quantum field, in the unified field. And that is just a scientific truth. And there is an experiment that I many times refer to that I've heard about from one of my mentors, Dr. Joe Dispenza, I follow his work for a long, long time. And I had the honor to work with him for a little while as well. And he many times shares this experiment where they took a group of women with a certain type of cancer, and they scanned the electromagnetic field around their body and saw that all of them have the same pattern in their electromagnetic field. Then they took another group of women that did not have the cancer. Some of them had that same pattern in their field. And then some years later, they followed that group. And out of these women that did not have the cancer, those that had the same pattern in their field developed the same kind of cancer. And there are many experiments of this kind, but this is a really simple way to see how the cancer, the physical condition, the physical, tangible, substantial condition that we can say, but this is my reality. How can I? Yes, but this reality was created energetically first, before we could see it, feel it, smell it, taste it, touch it, without the machinery, the equipment, the technology to be able to scan the field. But the field was there regardless of the technology that allowed us to tap into it, right? It was first created in the field as an energetic pattern. So I know that for still most people, this still sounds a bit out there and hard to grasp and totally believe in. But if you are willing to study just a little bit further and look to the evidence, because we are programmed to rely on physical evidence. And so there is physical evidence, there is research, and there are explanations that anyone can understand with just a little bit of attention. And this can unlock that disbelief. Because if it's first created in the field, and the field is energetic, and my thoughts carry frequencies, and what I feel is a frequency, basically. So when we say I feel stressed, we're basically saying I'm vibrating on this low frequency that we can give it a number and measure it, instead of a word with a number, how we would measure, just like we can say, this is red, but this is also a wave that we can measure, not with the word red, but with a certain number. Or this is C major, but it has a certain frequency. Now, with these things, we know that. We learn that in in primary school. So our system it's not hard for us to understand that these are waves, that even if we see the color or hear the sound, this is a wave. It's the same thing with our thoughts. It's the same thing with our feelings. And it's the same thing with our physical body, with our money in the bank, with every single thing. It's first created in the field as a wave. And so maybe I don't feel like I have the power to change, the cancer in the body or the money in the bank right away, but definitely I can change my thoughts. It might be difficult. It might require, that's the practice, right? But there's nobody outside of me that can force me to think in a certain way. It's just me being committed to practicing that. And if I can do that, then I change the frequency, meaning I change the field. So if everything is first created in the field, I will change the things that I'm experiencing. So this is how I approach this. And this is why I include this in my teaching and in my work and in the way that I practice and teach others to practice. Definitely, it's including, to some extent, the scientific study and understanding, because I think that it's really, really important. And as an analytical person myself, I needed that too.
Yeah, that's a good point. And luckily, we do have quite a few studies available now and a lot of work that's being done on that. And so,
yes,
yeah, we can definitely talk about a lot of those things when it comes to, we want proof that this works.
exactly.
The technology and science are starting to wander in those fields and make progress there. So, yeah, and it's also a really good point that, that we're mindful throughout our day what we are thinking and doing, because we are not only influencing our own internal world, we are also putting that out into the field, and with that affecting our reality and the reality of other people. So there's a mindfulness, right, that needs to happen once we become aware actually of how much power we do have with all of these frequencies, to use those to our benefit, and raise our vibrations to make sure that we are in alignment with what we actually want out of lives, or what we have contracted to do in our lives. So, yeah, these are fascinating discussions, and they ripple into really everything, not just our mental health or our happiness, but also our physical health, our reality, like you said, touches on everything in our lives, right? So,
absolutely.
yeah, wonderful. So how can people then work with you if they are curious now and they heard the word field and quantum this, quantum that, and now they're very curious as to how this can be done? How can they work with you? How can they connect with you? And do you have anything on offer that people could maybe start with if they've now wanted to dip their toes into this and they're curious? How can they reach you?
Yes, sure. Thank you so much for asking. Well, there are different ways to work with me. Obviously, what I would recommend is to get started in one or both ways. One is to click a link that people can find in the description of this episode, which will take you to a free workshop, basically a free training. It's a 3 parts training. It's called All the Way to the Top. And it's really going deeper into things that we've touched on today, with integration work and meditations that are included, and really a beautiful opportunity to go a bit more in depth and make it more personal. So to actually go into a little transformation there and applying the information through that process. And another way is to connect with me. So you can go to my Instagram, you can send me a message. And actually, I have a gift of a free meditation. So if you don't feel ready to a whole 3 days training, and you want something that, is a bit more quick, then there is a free meditation that I would love to share. So if you send me a DM on Instagram with the word energy, I'll know that this is what you're looking for. And it's a beautiful short meditation that is called Moving Energy Beyond the Senses. So it's really about connecting. Actually, everything that we got to discuss today it's very much related. It's connecting to the field and moving energy into the frequency and the concept and image of what you actually want, and releasing, those outdated patterns of belief and thought. So yeah, sending me a message on DM, like a DM on Instagram with the word energy, or any other message. If you feel like asking me any question, I would love to connect. And if you want to go a bit deeper, then this free workshop, this free training can be a really good place to start.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And of course, we will be linking to all of Shimrit's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there for the links to how to contact her, the free workshop, and anything else that she recommends that you could use as resources. And if you have questions, be sure to reach out to her and ask her. There are a lot of interesting things around what we talked about today. So I'm sure there's lots of things that you could ask and discuss with her. And if you do end up working with Shimrit, let us know what your experience is like. I always love to know how our listeners make out with our guests when they connect
Nice.
Work together. So reach out to us, and you can find us on Instagram as well and on all the socials, and let me know what your experience has been like, and what kind of transformations and shifts were happening in your life. We're always curious to find out more. Yeah. Well, this has been another incredible episode, and I really hope our listeners have enjoyed our journey into the sort of interchanging and how that affects our outer world, and how this can empower us to actually change our lives. And it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the episode today. And thank you so much for the time and your wisdom that you brought today, Shimrit. It was wonderful to chat with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Petra. I'm so grateful and I've enjoyed every moment. And yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. And take really good care of yourself, Shimrit, and all the best. And I hope we get to chat again because I feel like this is a topic where we could definitely add some more to the episode.
I agree. I would love to come again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.